Hello everyone and welcome to this video about SWOT analysis. You may have heard of SWOT analysis. It is a very common and popular tool both in academia and amongst students as well as in the broader business world. SWOT as a tool helps us develop insights and understandings of a particular organization or company's internal environment as it relates to both the external micro and macro environment. So it does touch upon all three of the environments an organization operates within, the internal environment, the micro external environment, and the macro external environment as well. We do have to recognize some of the limitations of not just SWOT analysis, but analytical tools like this. In that they are a means to help us organize our thoughts in a particular way so we can see things clearly and develop insights, as well as to help prompt us find information which may be important or relevant. But the output of SWOT analysis and other analytical tools really depends on the quality of the information we put into them. So if you have a SWOT analysis of a particular company, but you've put very poorly researched and poor quality information into the tool, you're going to get poor quality information out of the tool as well. So if we start just by looking at the term SWOT itself, SWOT is an acronym. It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And these are the four areas that we're going to be looking at, the four areas that comprise the actual tool itself. For each of these four areas, we need to gather information, so high quality information that should be gathered. And then at the end, we can place all of the relevant information we've found into a grid that will help us understand, give us an overview of the organization and how it operates in its external environments, as well as relevant information about its internal environment. That's an important thing to note, actually, that we can divide these four areas into two groups. The first of which, strengths and weaknesses, relates to our internal environment. So we're looking about the strengths and weaknesses of the company or organization. So it's internal strengths and its internal weaknesses. Whereas opportunities and threats relate to the external environment. So it's opportunities outside of the organization, either in the micro or macro environments, as well as threats outside of the organization, again, either in the micro or macro external environment. We can start by looking at the first of these areas, strengths. So what kind of questions would we ask? What kind of information do we need to get in order to understand the strengths of our organization? Well, some of them are fairly basic. So what does your organization do well? What kinds of activities does your organization excel in? What's unique about your products or services? So if you look at your product or service compared to competitors' offerings, what advantage is there to your product or service? What's unique or compelling about your offerings? Why do customers choose to buy from you? And this isn't just necessarily connected to the actual products and services. It could be connected to availability. It could be connected to bundling with other products or services. It could be connected to reputation. So there's lots of different reasons we can identify as being potential strengths if we look at this question. Other questions including what advantages do you have that your competitors don't? And this should lead in to the next two related questions. What gives you a competitive advantage? What is your competitive advantage? As well as what unique or rare skills, assets, or resources does your organization have access to, which perhaps other organizations or other competitors don't have access to? Now, it is important to clarify that these questions are just example questions to help you think about and identify the strengths of the company you're working on. The answers are not intended to be part of your actual SWOT analysis. So what you want to do is use the question to identify specific strengths, which means that some of these questions may be relevant and helpful, others may not be relevant to your particular company. So what we want as an output of this exercise is for you to have, perhaps as a series of bullet points, just a list of particular strengths. Ideally, if you're submitting for an assessment or as part of an exercise for a unit, they should have citations as well. So if we move on from strengths and we go to the next area, which is weaknesses. The same thing, we're just looking for a list of weaknesses, but there's some questions here that may help you identify some relevant weaknesses. So some of them are just the opposite of the questions for the previous section. What area does your organization do poorly in? What areas do your competitors perform better than your company in? But also, so think about the regular complaints that may be heard. So if there's consistent a high volume of complaints about particular things, that's likely to indicate an internal weakness. What areas do you need to improve to gain a competitive advantage in, as well as what skills, assets, and resources that you wish you had. So as an organization, the things that you lack access to that would otherwise give you a competitive advantage or allow you to compete on a more even footing with your competitors. All of these things may indicate particular weaknesses internal to the organization. So both strengths and weaknesses are internal. The next two, opportunities and threats, are external. So this is looking outside of the organization itself. So opportunities are what they sound like. So they're chances that the organization could take to expand, to improve, to gain more profitability, to gain new customers. Opportunities to develop a dominance in a particular market. So all of these are chances to do better or chances to do more. And we have questions that help us identify potential opportunities external to the organization as well. So broader political, social, and economic trends which may be positive for your organization. So these are things which are occurring outside and independent of the organization. So these are macro level trends, macro external trends, but open up space to move into, or open up space for opportunities for your organization. So let's say you have a company that specializes in green technology when it comes to house, so solar panels for residential housing, for example. You can identify that there's definite political and social trends moving away from fossil fuel usage, moving towards green energy, moving towards green energy for consumers as well. So we can see that there's quite clearly a big opportunity opening up because of these political and social trends, and therefore that's an opportunity for your green energy or your solar panel company. As well as this, other questions. So is there consumer needs that competitors aren't meeting? Can you identify something which consumers would want but are not currently being offered? Are your customers asking you for something which you don't offer, but if you could, it represents an opportunity to expand or develop your business as well? Is the market changing in a way that can help you? And this is quite a fundamental question. So is there something about the micro external environment which is changing? So the way things are being regulated, the bargaining power of suppliers or the bargaining power of customers, is the micro environment changing in a way that could be beneficial and that could open up opportunities as well? And lastly, do any of your competitors have any identifiable weaknesses that you could exploit? So again, presenting you with an opportunity. And our last area now is threats. And again, very similar to opportunities. These are external to the organization, but represent some kind of danger. And sustainability would be a key word here. So a major area or a major source of threats would be products or services or something external which is not sustainable for the organization. So are your products and services sustainable to offer in the long run? That could relate to environmental sustainability. i.e. because we're moving towards an era of both governments and consumers being very conscious of environmental impact. We've got a limited amount of time to implement scientific recommendations regarding climate change as expressed in things like the Paris Climate Accords. So products and services which are environmentally damaging are really not sustainable in the long run. So if your company depends on these kinds of unsustainable products and services, then there's a clear threat that we can identify from the macro external environment, from social trends and political trends that would represent a threat. As well as this, we have other sources of threats as well. So target market shrinking or becoming unsustainable, and this is largely about economic unsustainability. So if your target market focuses on a very particular type of consumer, a very particular type of customer, and there's changes in that in your target population, that could represent economic unsustainability. Competitors planning new products and services, not just ones which are directly competing against your products and services, but also substitutes that could really present a long-term threat. So think of companies like camera companies, so traditional film camera companies that failed to adapt to a new emerging product category of digital cameras and then smartphone cameras. So threat of substitutes is also a significant source of threats as well. Companies that could become potential competitors. So if you think about companies like Google, for example, or even Apple, huge companies with lots of leverage, strong source of funding and so on, that if they were to move into your particular market, that could represent a huge threat, a massive competitive challenge. So not just immediate competitors, but also potential competitors as well. And lastly, the general negative political, social, and economic trends, so the things in the macro environment that could negatively impact your company. Right, so that gives us an overview of the 4 distinct areas of SWOT analysis. You have an idea of the kinds of questions you can ask to identify the various strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that are relevant to your company or organization. In terms of how you would want to present this information, again, we can see a number of different ways to present it, but most commonly we see a grid where you have your individual points which should be expressed in a concise manner. Again, ideally with citations in a grid which allows us to see internal and external distinctions between strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats, as well as positive, so strengths and opportunities, as contrasted with negatives, as in weaknesses and threats.